Jai Baba. None dies and none knows to die. The rare one who knows to die is never born again. Meher Baba. Avatar Meher Baba ki Jai. Thanks to beloved Baba and Jai Baba to all of you. We are on session 2 of Meher Baba on death. In yesterday's session, we, in a sense, covered up what is the importance of death, what is real death, why the creation, what is the purpose of creation, what is the meaning of one death and one life, or one birth and one death. As Baba would have it, the initial couple of minutes, maybe around 15, 20, 25 minutes have not been recorded. So we would try to record it today after this session. So right now we are jumping into Baba's discourses, which is page number 301. So we will read, as I said yesterday, we'll read from discourses, we will read from Listen Humanity, we will take some synopsis from a book called Understanding Death, and then there are various statements given by Baba at different points in time. They are all included in Lord Meher, which is Baba's biography, and we'll try to understand what Baba wants us to understand with regard to death. So now we are reading from Discourses, page number 301.
Reincarnation and Karma, Part 1. The significance of death. Identification of soul with gross body. The worldly person completely identifies life with the manifestations and activities of the gross body. For him, therefore, the beginning and the end of bodily existence are also the beginning and the end of the individualized soul. All his experience seems to testify to the transitoriness of the physical body, and he has often witnessed the disintegration of physical bodies that were once vibrant with life. Hence, he is naturally impelled to believe that life is coterminous with bodily existence.
See, yesterday we had done that real death is not the physical death, but the death of the mind, death of desires, death of limitations, all limitations, that is real death. Now what we are discussing is the physical death. We also know that there are 3 bodies: the gross body, which we can see, feel, touch, the subtle body, and the mental body. What we normally term as death is only the death or the termination of the physical body. The other 2 bodies, the subtle and the mental bodies, continues living in another sphere, which we'll come to later on in the subsubtle or the astral sphere, which is known as where you experience the acute mental state of heaven or hell. The issue or the problem with death is, again, ignorance. The suffering caused to people when they see death of a near and dear ones, they suffer, they are in agony, they feel the loss of a particular person because we have wrongly, erroneously identified the self or the soul with the body. The body is only a medium, madhyam, an instrument for the spirit to realize itself as the self, as God. Here Baba says, the worldly person completely identifies itself with the manifestation and activities of the gross body. We only are connected with the gross body. For him, therefore, The beginning and the end of the bodily existence are also the beginning and the end of the individualized soul. Herein lies the mistake. All his experience seems to testify to the transitoriness of the physical body. The physical body is transitory. It is impermanent. It is phenomenal. And he has often witnessed the disintegration of physical bodies that were once vibrant with life. Hence, he is naturally impelled to believe that life is coterminous with bodily existence. Coterminous would mean concurrent with or having the same extent or the boundary. This is the main cause of problems, of issue, the ignorance of identifying the body as the self.
It is also because you depend upon somebody. That is why
I can't hear. Okay. As?
Death as the background of life. As the worldly individual considers death to be the cessation of life, he gives great importance to it. There are few, however, who contemplate death for prolonged periods. And in spite of the fact that most persons are completely engrossed in their worldly pursuits, they are impressed by the incident of death when confronted by it. For most people, the earthly scene of life has, as its background, the inevitable and irresistible fact of death, which imperceptibly enters into their greatest triumphs and achievements, their keenest pleasures and rejoicing. Apart from being the general background in the scene of life, death, through their interest in, death also assumes an accentuated and overwhelming importance among the variegated incidents of life. Death falls among those happenings that are most dreaded and lamented. People in malice or anger try to inflict death upon each other as the last penalty or the worst revenge, or they rely upon it as the surest way of removing aggression or interference by others. People also invite death upon themselves as the token of supreme sacrifice, and at times they seek it with the false hope of putting an end to all the worldly worries and problems they are unable to face or solve. Thus, in the minds of most persons, death assumes an accentuated and overwhelming importance.
Now here, we are giving overwhelming importance to death. The subtitle is Death as Background of Life. That means anything that you do, finally death will overtake. Finally, the end of all is death. That is the wrong interpretation. Baba says, as the worldly individual considers death to be the cessation of life, cessation, stoppage of life, he gives great importance to it. We all tend to give a lot of importance to death, whereas Baba's one-liner definition of death is an incident in life. That's all. There are few, however, who contemplate death for a prolonged period. Contemplate would mean to think deeply and for a long period of time. You keep on thinking very deeply and for a long period of concerning death. Contemplate death for prolonged periods. And in spite of the fact that most persons are completely engrossed in their worldly pursuits, we are all engrossed in our worldly business, job, whatever it is. They are impressed by the incident of death when confronted by it. We are very merrily going around our own work, our own business, but when death occurs in our family, to some close ones, we are very much affected by it, we are very much impressed by it, we give a lot of importance to it, which is basically false importance or wrong importance to it. For most people, the earthly scene of life has, as its background, the inevitable and irresistible fact of death. Inevitably, you do whatever, you make a lot of money, you made so many homes, you married, you had so many. Ultimately, the inevitable end is the death. That's what people feel, which imperceptibly enters into the greatest triumphs, into their greatest triumphs and achievements, their keenest pleasures and rejoicing. Imperceptibly means very stealthily, very subtly, without giving us a lot of announcement or notice, unnoticeably, imperceptibly, that enters into our life and it affects our keenest pleasures or rejoicing. In other words, it is so slyly and so unannounced, unnoticed, it comes into our life. Apart from being the general background to the scene of life, it's a general background. Whatever you do, the background is death. Death also assumes an accentuated and overwhelming importance among the variegated incidents of life. Here, the meaning of accentuated is heightened, giving a lot of importance to that. Accentuated and overwhelming. Overwhelming again is enormous, immense, very strong. Overwhelming importance among the variegated incidents. Variegated would mean diverse, varied, colorful, multifarious incidents of life. That falls among those happenings that are most dreaded, most feared, most fearful, most frightening, most terrifying, most alarming, dreaded and lamented. Lamented would mean that you brood over it, you cry over it, you keep on crying over it, that way. And lamented. Grieved, wail, moan, cry, all that means lamentation. People in malice would mean that where there is hatred, where there is spite, where there is bitterness, in malice or anger, try to inflict death upon each other as the last penalty or the worst revenge. People try to kill the other out of spite, out of anger, out of bitterness. And they feel that they have done away with that person, so that whatever was a hindrance, whatever was what we call as an urchin, is now gone. They inflict that. Or they rely upon it as the surest way of removing aggression or interference by others. In other words, they inflict, they shoot, they kill the other person in order to pave our way or pathway. People also invite death upon themselves as the token of supreme self-sacrifice. They invite death upon themselves, and at times they seek it. Seek it would mean seek the death. They seek it with the false hope of putting an end to all the worldly worries and problems they are unable to face or solve. People are not able to solve worldly worries or tensions, emotional, mental, physical, whatever it is, and therefore they inflict death upon themselves. That means basically they commit suicide with the hope, with a very, very false hope that by committing suicide and by putting an end to their own life, they are able to get out of the problem or worries or stress or tension or whatever emotional turmoil that they are going through. Little realizing that they are punishing their body by dismantling it, by destroying it for the problem which is in the mind. Try to understand all these emotions, stress, tension, worries, they are in the mind. And for the issues of the mind, you are punishing the body in the hope that they are all be over. But Baba says that they become multiplied because the mind and the energy body goes along with us. It is not destroyed till the fag end of the journey. So here Baba says that committing suicide, we'll come to suicide when we read further what are the various types of suicide. Baba discusses each one of them. We are in the worst situation, much, much worse than even the worst of the hell. Baba is so very particular about saying that suicide is the worst thing that anybody can do for the simple reason that your soul remains in a limbo. You are neither in this world because you don't have a physical body, nor do you get entry into the astral world because your sanskaras are still pending to be expended or utilized or spent, and therefore you become like a ghost and you move here, there. It's a terrible, terrible suffering. So here Baba says that many times you seek this death with the false hope of putting an end to all the worldly worries and problems that they are troubled with and they are faced with. Thus, in the minds of most persons, death assumes an accentuated and overwhelming importance. Baba, through his own personal example, has never given importance to the physical death. The importance that he always stressed, as we said, as we did yesterday, was he wants us to die, but he wants us to die the real death. He wants us to die while we are still alive. He wants us to die to our desires, longings and all that, so that when we die the real death, we live in God and as God.
Continuity of life. The overwhelming importance of death is derived from man's attachment to particular forms. But death loses much of its sting and importance, even for the worldly, if one takes a broader view of the course of life. In spite of the transitoriness, there is an unbroken continuity of life through these forms, old ones being discarded and new ones being created for habitation and expression. The recurring incidence of death is matched by the recurring incidence of birth. Old generations are replaced by new ones. Life is reborn in new forms, incessantly renewing and refreshing itself. The streams of life, with their ancient origin, are ever advancing onward through the forms that come and go like the waves of the ocean.
So here what continuity of life. Why we give an overwhelming importance to death is because of our attachment to a particular form, to a particular body. We have erroneously thought that this body is all that is, the form, including our own body. Once we take a larger view that life is continuous, that one body is dropped and that soul takes another body, the key word, according to my limited understanding, there are few words which are very potent, very powerful, if we understand them in the right perspective, by and large, our life would be happy, very fluffy and light. One of the words is attachment. If we are attached to anything, we are bound to suffer when that particular anything goes out of sight from us. Attachment. Attachment, or rather the opposite of attachment, is detachment. Does it mean that I should not be attached to my husband, wife, children, mother, father, spouse, or whatever your brothers? No. It only means, it doesn't mean that you be heartless, you be callous, you be in a form of, I don't care, I care two hoots for such a person. No. It only means that you will continue to love, you will continue to care, you will continue to be concerned with the background understanding that all this is transient, all this is temporary, all this is ephemeral, all this is there today, tomorrow it will not be there. So attachment is one word which creates a lot of suffering. The second word, according to me, again my limited thought process, is expectation. The moment we expect anything out of anybody or anything, and if that thing does not happen, it brings us suffering. Does it mean that you should not expect, I should not expect to get good grades in an examination, I should not expect to get a salary hike, I should not expect to get a good job? No, it doesn't mean that. In my understanding, there are two aspects of expectation. One is which propels us to do our best in whatever we are doing. I want to do my best because so and so. And the other is that if you don't achieve that expected result, you feel sad, you feel sorrowful, you go down. So the first expectation is good. It is actually positive. But it has to be done with a detached state of mind. In other words, whatever needs to be done at that particular point in time has to be done with a lot of enthusiasm, with a lot of creativity, with a lot of everything that you have. But with a detached state of mind. If it happens, well and good. If it doesn't happen, so be it. Once we start doing that in our life, then by and large we remain undisturbed, unperturbed, unshaken by life's forces, life's currents. Because that life's force and life's current are not in our hand. So coming back to reading, the overwhelming importance of death is derived from man's attachment to particular forms. But death loses much of its sting, that means the suffering, the hurt, and importance, even for the worldly, if one takes a broader view of the course of life. If we take a broader view, like Baba explains, when somebody died and somebody was brooding, Baba says, why are you crying? You have had thousands of husbands and thousands of children, and life is a one full running thing. And Baba, being all-knowing, he says, this is only one loss. It is something like you are traveling in a train, and some passenger comes in, you make friendship with that passenger, you talk, you exchange notes, you exchange your addresses, your cards, and the station comes and the passenger gets off. Do you cry? You don't cry. Because you know that this is not a permanent ride. Somebody will come in our life, somebody will go out of our life, and these things will keep on happening. The love should be there, the concern should be there, the care should be there, the selflessness should be there, but the attachment should not be there. Once we have that balance, then by and large, things don't disturb or perturb us too much. Then somebody said, but it is but natural, Baba, that when I love my wife or my mother or my sister, there's bound to be attachment. And then Baba said, okay, if you want to have attachment, Let all those attachments be only skin deep, not deep. And let your attachment with me or with God be heart deep. So once we are attached to Baba deeply, all our other attachments automatically fades away. They are there. Again and again I repeat, it does not mean that you will not love, you will not care, you will not be concerned. No, it means you will do everything that needs to be done with a detached state of mind. So here Baba says, if you take a broader view, because we have been coming and going for millions of years. In this life, our togetherness, father, mother, sister, brother, wife, husband, children, is about 100 years, 80, 90 years, 70 years. That's all. In those millions of lifetime, this is only a very short period. And if we take a broader view, that's what Baba says, then much of the sting of death goes away. Old ones being discarded and the new ones being created for habitation and expression. Old forms are going, new forms are coming. That is the correct understanding which Baba wants us to have, so that we do not suffer when somebody close to us dies. The recurring incidence of death is matched by the recurring incidence of birth. Births and deaths, births and deaths, births and deaths keep coming and going. Old generations are replaced by new ones. Life is reborn in new forms. Incessantly. Incessantly means continuously, without a break, unendingly. If you see 10,000 years, the Roman Empire or the Persepolis or all those huge empires, where are they today? They are underground. There is nowhere, nothing. So things keep on changing. And the one who is able to ride the surf of change is the happiest. He is not stuck on to one thing. Oh, for example, let's say even Mehrabad. What was it 50 years back, 100 years back? It will keep on changing. Everything, the only thing that is constant in life is change. It will keep on changing all the time. And once we realize that change is the law, change is the rule, change is the order, then we are not perturbed. Otherwise we start thinking, oh, good old days, those days it was like this, now she. Because we are not adapting ourselves to the change. And change is something which will keep on happening all through. Today what Mehrabad is or what the world is, 100 years from now it will be quite different, absolutely different. And all of us will brag, oh, it was so nice at that time, but now it is becoming worse. So in the same way, the only thing that is certain in life is death. And that is the only thing which we are not prepared for, which we have not bothered to study. That's what we are studying now. Which we have not bothered to know what death is all about. Right? So, old generation, the streams of life with their ancient origin are ever advancing onwards through the forms that come and go like waves of the ocean. They will come and go, come and go. There will be constant change in everything connected with creation. And if we are stuck up on a particular mode of life, then we are bound to suffer. That means we are not changing with times. And if we don't change with times, we seem to be left out. And we are always brooding about it. So that's it.
Attachment to specific forms. So, even within the limits of experience of the worldly, there is much that should mitigate morbid thoughts of death as being an irreparable loss. A sane attitude towards death is possible only if life is considered impersonally and without any attachment to particular forms. This the worldly person finds difficult because of his entanglement with specific forms. For him, one form is not as good as another. The form he identifies himself with is by far the most important. The general preservation and advancement of the stream of life has for him no special interest. What the worldly individual craves is a continuation of his own form and other particular forms with which he is entangled. His heart cannot reconcile itself to his intellect. With the vanishing of the forms that have been dear to him, he becomes a victim of unending sorrow, though life as a whole may have replaced elsewhere the lost forms with new ones. The sorrow of death, on close analysis, turns out to be on closer analysis, turns out to be rooted in selfishness. The person who loses his beloved may know intellectually that life as a whole has elsewhere compensated for the loss, but his only feeling is, what is that to me? When one looks at it from one's own personal point of view, death becomes a cause of unending sorrow. From the point of view of life in general, it is an episode of minor importance.
See, Baba says it is an episode of minor importance, whereas we give so much of importance to death. Again, why? Ignorance. Why? Attachment to a particular form. And so much of importance we have given to that form, or for that matter to our form, not realizing that this is a temporary vehicle. The body is a very temporary vehicle which my spirit or soul or Atma is using in order to forward myself closer and closer to the truth, to reality, to God, to Baba. If we understand that way, that this is a very temporary vehicle, 60, 70, 80 years, 90 years at the most, in terms of time, in terms of eternity, millions of births and deaths have gone. So once we see things in a broader view, in a broader viewpoint, or once we see things in a very detached state of mind, and I keep repeating this, detached does not mean that you will not take care of your body or somebody else's body whom you are supposed to take care of. Detachment only means that you understand the truth or the reality of this particular relationship of that 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years. This is how I would look at it. Attachment to specific form. So even within the limits of experience of the worldly, there is much that should mitigate. Mitigate would mean lessen or lighten or reduce, or even to that extent completely do away with. To mitigate morbid thoughts of death. Morbid would mean gloomy, depressive, negative thoughts about death. And death as an irreparable loss. Today, for most people, most human beings, death is considered as an irreparable loss. Now it is a loss. Why? Again, because of wrong thinking, because of attachment to that particular form. A sane attitude. Sane would mean sound, balanced, matured, clear-headed attitude. A sane attitude towards death is possible only if life is considered impersonally. Very important word, which otherwise means detached way. Impersonally and without any attachment to a particular or to particular form. So once we start, yesterday there was somebody asking something, and I said, if you take life impersonally, if you take life as if you are doing a role play in whatever position that you are, your role, it's just a role play. You see, it is like a drama going on, one actor coming on the stage as a king and now the role as a king is over, and then he goes into the back, whatever you call it, that green room, again does another makeup, and after some time comes on the stage as a beggar. So it is the same thing which is repeating, different roles we are playing in this drama of life. And once we realize that this is just a role that I am playing, then again that means you are doing things impersonally and without any attachment. So here Baba says that it is possible, considered possible, a sane attitude toward death is possible only if life is considered impersonally and without any attachment to particular form. This the worldly person finds difficult. Now as I am reading this, as people are hearing it, how can that be? That's what exactly Baba is saying. Okay, this the worldly people finds difficult because of his entanglement with specific forms. Entanglement, attachment, same thing, with specific forms. For him, one form is not as good as another. Therefore, the form he identifies himself with is by far the most important. For him, I identify with this form. Now if I give too much of importance with this form, then I am attached to it. I am supposed to take care of my body, which is a vehicle. If you own a car, you take care. You polish it, so here you take a bath. You put petrol, so here you eat food and drink water or whatever it is. So care has to be taken. But undue attachment for it, then if it is, I am so attached to my car that a little dent here and a little dent there, and I am so disturbed and perturbed, I don't get sleep, I brood, or if there's a bigger dent, then I get into litigation with some people, go to the court, file a suit. What I'm trying to convey is, it is the attachment which creates all these issues or problems. So here Baba says, the general preservation and advancement of the stream of life has for him no special interest. I am not interested in this philosophy of the advancing stream of life. One body goes and the other body comes. I am not. I am interested in my body and in the bodies of those who I am connected with or attached with. That is a very narrow, negative, in a sense, way of thinking, which is bound to give us suffering. What the worldly individual craves is a continuation of his own form and other particular forms with which he is entangled. I am not concerned, I am not bothered what happens to the rest of the world. I am only concerned I should be safe and sound, and those who are connected with me, with whom I am entangled, families, friends, whatever it is, wife, husband, that should be okay. Others I don't care. His heart cannot reconcile itself to his intellect. Now, intellectually we know that life keeps on going, life keeps on coming. Intellectually we know that we are granted this limited period of time, as I say, 60, 70, 80 years, with this limited vehicle, and after this vehicle will drop. It will go away, and we will get another form. So I am not interested in that. I am only interested in the continuation, which is of my form, and of those forms whom I am associated with. This is ignorance, Baba says. Yes.
So there is someone online, SSK, he is asking, in death, does the mind realizes that it has died in the physical body?
According to me, yes. According to me, yes, because the mind realizes that there is no physical body. The mind experiences the state of heaven or hell in the astral world with the astral body. That another body comes up with the astral world in the astral body. And then when the period of suffering in hell or enjoyment in heaven is over, that astral body is again dropped in the astral world, and you take a new physical body along with the astral body and start living your life on earth or as a physical form. So yes, if you ask whether the mind realizes, yes, initially there is a shock. Initially you don't know what has happened to you. You try to convey, because the soul is immortal. The mind can see the body. The mind wants to communicate with somebody, but cannot because there is no physical mouth to communicate. And then over a period of time, the soul does realize that he has passed over to another dimension which does not allow him to connect with the gross dimension.
Okay, so it's there in God Speaks, it's there in God's Hands, it's there in the new book, I think recently released. I'm forgetting the name of the book, Creation and its Causes, that after that a body goes to heaven or hell state.
Body does not go.
Sorry,
it is only the subtle body and the mental body. Yeah.
So mind experiences,
yes,
depending on the sanskaras.
One at a time. It's not happiness
yes.
and suffering.
Depending on the sanskaras.
Yeah, which are predominant. You're suffering, and then you switch.
Yeah. So it's a shock, and
yes.
At the very first time, because mind do not find the body.
Correct.
It's a shock for that mind, and then it eventually realizes that the body is no more, and the journey goes on.
Yes, correct. All right. So,
what the worldly?
With the vanishing of the form that have been dear to him, he becomes a victim of unending sorrow. See, we are creating our own sorrow and suffering because of our wrong thinking, because of our wrong imagination, because of our ignorance. Baba says elsewhere about suffering is a result of the ignorance of the true nature of the self. Because we are ignorant of the true nature of the self is bliss. It is all joy. But because we are ignorant of that, because we have ignorantly and erroneously associated ourselves with the vehicle or the body or the form or the madhyam which is given to us to experience that much period on earth, because we are so wrongly associated, and I consider this as I. And when something happens to the I am suffering. This is just a physical form which is, if you may, 1/3 of the real I, because the other two are the subtle body and the mental body. And the real I is beyond all this actually. All right. With the vanishing of the forms that have been dear to him, he becomes a victim of unending sorrow, though life as a whole may have replaced elsewhere the lost forms with the new ones. This form is lost. It is again replaced as a new form elsewhere. But why am I suffering? Because of my attachment to that particular form only. Not just an attachment, but also an entanglement with that particular form only. So by reading this, if we become slightly wiser to love, to care, to be concerned for, to perform our duties, discharge our responsibilities, but in a detached manner, then by and large we are on safe grounds. The sorrow of death, on closer analysis, turns out to be rooted in selfishness. If you see any sorrow of death, why am I? What will I do now? I. If wife dies, who is going to make breakfast for me? I. You see, that everything, if you, in a deeper analysis, when you analyze death, it is rooted in selfishness. Even though we know somebody is dying, somebody is suffering, somebody is on bed for so many years, somebody is ailing from cancer, from AIDS, from whatever it is, And even when such a person dies, it is such a profound blessing for that person that he or she has been relieved of all the aches and pains and stress and money loss and everything. And yet, we cry. Isn't that ignorance? Isn't that a stupidity? But we do that. Why? Because of our attachment and entanglement to that form. Then sometimes we cry, never mind, even though it is suffering, at least he or she is in front of my eyes, at least I can see him or her, at least I can talk to him or her, at least I can touch the body. I. So everything, Baba says, on deeper analysis, it is noted, it is found that this sorrow or suffering or brooding or weeping or wailing is rooted in selfishness. The person who loses his beloved may know intellectually that life as a whole has elsewhere compensated for the loss, but his only feeling is, what is that for me? What is there for me? What is in it for me? How do I benefit? So there is always a selfish concern. When one looks at it from one's own personal point of view, that becomes a cause of unending sorrow. That means we should not look at that from one's personal point of view, but with a broader perception that the person had come to experience samskaras and which he has brought with him at the time of birth. These samskaras are all expended, spent, utilized, experienced, and now there are no further samskaras from his past birth to be utilized or spent or experienced, and therefore the body has dropped. Chapter is over. It's something like this. You go on a world tour taking money, huge sums of money, and with a return ticket. It is already prepaid return ticket. You go around gallivanting here, there, everywhere. Once the entire money that you have taken on your tour is over, is spent, what do? You use the return ticket and come back home. It is simple as that we come on earth with a load of samskaras to be experienced, expended, spent, whatever you call it. Once that is over, normally, Baba says, normal death occurs when samskaras which are brought with us at birth for experiencing and spending are all utilized. Automatically you go back home. Where are you going ultimately? Honestly, what is there to cry? You are going back to a place where you came from. You are going back home. So what is there to cry about it? So all crying, weeping, wailing, whatever, brooding is an act of selfishness. It's an act of ignorance. That's what Baba says. When one looks at it from one's own personal point of view, that becomes a cause of unending sorrow. From the point of view of life in general, it is an episode of minor importance. These are God's words, and if we consider ourselves as God lovers or Baba lovers, I think we need to change our reactions, our responses to death with a proper understanding as Baba himself has given. Go ahead.
Problems of impersonal intellect. Impersonal considerations go a long way to fortify the mind against the personal sorrow caused by death. But they do not by themselves solve the wider problems that confound even the impersonal intellect of man when he considers some of the implications of death within the limits of his ordinary experience. If death is regarded as the final annihilation of individual existence, there seems to be an irreparable loss to the universe. Each individual may be in a position to give to the universe something so unique that no one else can exactly replace it. Further, in most cases, there is the cutting short of an earthly career long before the attainment of spiritual perfection by the individual. All his struggles towards the ideal, all his endeavor and enthusiasm for the great, the good, and the beautiful, and all his aspirations for things divine and eternal seem to end in the vast nothingness created by death.
Now here Baba says that even if you take this problem at an impersonal level, you are not personally affected in a sense, but yet the thoughts keep coming. Like, it's something like, oh, I just bought a new toothpaste. Now, if I die, then finish, it will be wasted. Or I just started a new project, and if I die, it will remain unfinished, So that again is another question, Baba says. Impersonal consideration. Impersonal would mean not showing any preferences, or the other word could be neutral. There is no personal, what is in it for me, that way. There is no selfishness here, because Baba says it is mostly selfishness, but here there is no selfishness. Okay, granted that impersonal or neutral considerations go a long way to fortify the mind, to strengthen the mind, to give proper understanding to the mind against the personal sorrow caused by death. Because now it is impersonal, so personal sorrow of death is not there, right? But they do not by themselves solve the wider problems that confound means that it is confusing, that I don't know what to do about it. I am so muddled up, kind of. Wider problems that confound even the impersonal intellect of man when he considers some of the implications of death within the limits of his ordinary experience. Now he is not having personal suffering. He has grown above personal. Now he has become impersonal. Now he has become neutral. But even for such a person, there are certain implications of death which he is unable to gauge and understand. Now what are those? If death is regarded as the final annihilation of individual existence, there seems to be an irreparable loss to the universe. I had studied so much. I have become a master of, let's say, IT. I have studied so much, and all of a sudden I die. So all my learning, all that I have really become expert at is lost. It is lost to the universe, because I have spent so much of time, money, energy, and I have become somebody who is an expert surgeon, and doctor, engineer, professor, whatever it is. And then all that is lost to the universe. That is the thought which a person with an impersonal bent of mind can also have. Each individual may be in a position to give to the universe something unique. Each one of us is very unique, and we can give to the universe which most others cannot give. So each person is unique, that no else can exactly replace it. Further, in most cases, there is cutting short of an earthly career long before the attainment of spiritual perfection by the individual. The whole purpose, I have done so much of sadhana, I have done so much of penance, I have done this yoga, that yoga. What was my aim? My aim was to achieve spiritual perfection. But before I could achieve that, I have popped off. I am no more. So the thinking is, what is the point in doing all these things when all of a sudden that can overtake anybody? Further, in most cases, there is the cutting short of an earthly career long before, the attainment of spiritual perfection by the individual. I read that. All his struggles towards the ideal, all his endeavors and enthusiasm for the great, the good and the beautiful, and all his aspirations for things divine and eternal seem to end in the vast nothingness created by death. So these are the other areas which a person who is seeing death at a very impersonal level, there is no personal sorrow, but at an impersonal level, his mind will think like this, okay, what is all this happening? I have struggled, I have strived, I have achieved a certain mark in my life, I am supposed to achieve here, but at this level only, what has swallowed me is the death.
Conflict between intellect and intuition. The implications in assuming death to be the termination of individual existence run counter to the ineradicable expectations based upon rationalized intuition. A conflict usually arises between the claims of intuition and the conclusions of impure intellect, which assumes death to be the termination of individual existence. Such conflict is often a beginning of pure thinking, which immediately, seriously challenges the usually accepted belief that death is the real termination of individual existence. Death as an extinction of life can never be wholly acceptable to the spiritual aspirations of man. Therefore, belief in the immortality of the individualized soul is often accepted by the human mind without much resistance, even in the absence of direct supersensible knowledge about the existence of life after death. Those who know from personal experience the immortality of the soul to be true are few. Supersensible knowledge of the existence of life after death is inaccessible to the vast majority of persons. For them, immortality must remain an agreeable and acceptable belief, but nothing more. It becomes a part of personal knowledge for those who, through their interest in the occult, have built up means of communication with other worlds, or those whose special circumstances have resulted in their personally experiencing the appearance or intervention of departed spirits, or those who, through their spiritual advancement, have automatically unfolded certain latent perceptual capacities of the inner vehicles of consciousness.
All right. Now there is a conflict between the intellect and the intuition. Intuition knows that there is life after death. Afterwards, in the process of reading this paragraph, we will try to discern and distinguish between existence and life. Existence is perennial, existence is immortal, existence is real, whereas life is temporary, transient, unreal, etc., etc. We'll read that again from God Speaks. But before that, the implication in assuming death to be the termination of individual existence run counter to the ineradicable. Ineradicable means that which cannot be eradicated, that which is permanent, that which is everlasting, that which is perpetual. Ineradicable expectation based upon rationalized intuition. That means there are some people who through intuition know that there is life. They may not experience it, but they know, they believe that there is life after death. A conflict usually arises between the claims of intuition and the conclusions of impure intellect. Intellect means I am only seeing the body is no more, he is gone, finished, chapter is over for him and for me, which assumes death to be the termination of individual existence. Intellect assumes death to be the termination, which means the end, absolutely the end, chapter close, as we say, QED, Eureka, end of everything.
That is why it's called impure. That is why it's called impure.
That's why it's called impure. This is impure intellect, which assumes death to be the termination of individual existence. But Baba says, such conflict is often a beginning of pure thinking. In other words, any conflict that we go into in life, especially inner turmoil, inner conflict, you can be sure that there is an opportunity of growth for us. We learn from it, inner conflict. Such conflict is often a beginning of pure thinking, which immediately, seriously challenges the usually accepted belief that death is the real termination of individual existence. So now you are going from impure thinking to pure thinking by the assistance or aid not of the intellect but of the intuition. Death as an extinction of life can never be wholly accepted to the spiritual aspirations of man. Those who have spiritual aspiration definitely know that there is a grand plan. There is a plan. It means that all your efforts are not lost. It is compensated somewhere, sometime. It is like you are continuing the journey, as Baba himself has said, that you in your next incarnation pick up from where you have left and then you move forward. It is not something that is completely lost. You may have to do your Jack and Jill went up the hill again from the start. But the spiritual aspect of your growth picks up from where you have left and then you move forward. Therefore, belief in the immortality of the individualized soul is often accepted by human mind without much resistance, even in the absence of direct supersensible knowledge. Supersensible means that which cannot be perceived through your five senses. It is not sensible, it is supersensible knowledge. We just know that life exists after death. Supersensible knowledge about the existence of life after death. Those who know from personal experience, there are some who know from personal experience the immortality of the soul to be true are very few. Only those who are advanced souls, spiritually advanced souls, they know from their personal experience that there is immortality of the soul, that the body only drops, the body takes on another form and continues its journey elsewhere, and then takes again another form and continues from where it has left off. Supersensible knowledge of the existence of life after death is inaccessible to vast majority of persons. You cannot access it. You cannot enter into that domain. You do not know how to get access to that domain where you get the knowledge of the immortality of the soul. For them, immortality must remain an agreeable and acceptable belief. Belief is something that is considered to be true without the actual knowledge of it. Belief is based on, in a sense, it is ignorance. There is no actual knowledge, but you take it that it is true without having the actual knowledge. Belief, but nothing more. It becomes a part of personal knowledge. Now, for whom does it become a part of personal knowledge? For those who, through their interest in the occult, there are some people who are very much interested in the occult. There are some people who are born with such occult facilities and faculties, have built up means of communication with other world. We call it whatever, auto writing or some way, some means of communicating with the other world. But then again, Baba elsewhere says that this capability, this acumen of being able to communicate with the other world has nothing to do with spirituality. There are people who are born, there are people who learn and they become experts at that, but it has nothing to do with pure and real spirituality. Or those whose spatial circumstances have resulted in their personally experiencing the appearance or intervention of departed soul. Certain people experience.
Spirits.
Sorry?
Spirits.
Certain people, there are clairaudience. They can hear the spirits talk to them and tell them about certain thing. There is something called clairvoyance. They can see the spirits all around. They can, like how we are seeing each other, they can see the spirit. So these are occult faculties which are endowed upon some very few people. Right. In their, let me complete this, it's just 2 lines. In their personal experience or through their spiritual advancement, have automatically unfolded certain latent perceptual means to be able to arrive at a certain aspect of perception which is beyond the physical means of arriving at that perception. Capacities of the inner vehicle of consciousness. This Baba very beautifully uses that these are, like this is the outer vehicle of consciousness. Seeing, feeling through the 5 senses. There are inner vehicle of consciousness which people are advanced soul or those who are gifted with it, they can use those inner vehicles and they can conceptualize. Yeah.
So if a person can see spirit or is prone towards occult environment, it helps to be more spiritual or not?
It helps to be more spiritual.
There is a chapter on occultism in the discourses. In the entire chapter, there is no condemnation of occultism. On the contrary, Baba is saying that it's a good thing. It has nothing to do with true spirituality. If it is used for the good, for spiritual reasons, then you grow and you help others to grow. But if it is used for mundane reason, it is in a sense a waste of your acumen or capability. So again, there is nothing called good or bad in my limited understanding. It all depends upon the use you put that particular capability to. Got it?
His question is whether it will help spiritually.
All right. Now what I am trying to do is, we are shifting from this book to God Speaks. Why? Because now we want to understand the difference between life and existence. Because Baba uses the word life, Baba uses the word existence. So what we have already done this, but I don't mind reading. Soumya will read the whole thing again as to what constitutes life and what constitutes existence. This is from God Speaks, which we have already done. But for those who have not been following us on the website, Trust website, we will do existence is substance and life is shadow.
Sorry.
Okay.
God Speaks, page 270, supplement 36, spiritual paradox.
No, you go down.
Existence is substance and life is shadow. Existence is eternal, whereas life is perishable. Thank you. Sorry, so sorry. Like I have to. I'm sorry. Comparatively, existence is what his body is to man, and life is as the cloth that covers the body. The same body changes clothes according to the seasons, time, and circumstances, just as the one and eternal existence is always there throughout the countless and varied aspects of life. Shrouded beyond recognition by the cloak of life with its multifarious folds and colors is existence unchangeable. It is the garb of life with its veils of mind, energy, and gross forms that shadows and superimposes on existence, presenting the eternal, indivisible, and unchangeable existence as transient, varied, and ever-changing. Existence is all-pervading and is the underlying essence of all things, whether animate or inanimate, real or unreal, varied in species or uniform in forms, collective or individual, abstract or substantial. In the eternity of existence, there is no time. There is no past and no future, only the everlasting present. In eternity, nothing has ever happened and nothing will ever happen. Everything is happening in the unending now. Existence is God, whereas life is illusion. Existence is reality, whereas life is imagination. Existence is everlasting, whereas life is ephemeral. Existence is unchangeable, whereas life is ever-changing. Existence is freedom, whereas life is a binding. Existence is indivisible, whereas life is multiple. Existence is imperceptible, whereas life is deceptive. Existence is independent, whereas life is dependent upon mind, energy, and gross forms. Existence is, whereas life appears to be. Existence, therefore, is not life. Birth and death do not mark the beginning or end of life, whereas the numerous stages and states of life which constitute the so-called births and deaths are governed by the laws of evolution and reincarnation. Life comes into being only once with the advent of the first dim rays of limited consciousness and succumbs to death only once on attaining the unlimited consciousness of infinite existence. Existence, all-knowing, all-powerful, all-present God is beyond cause and effect, beyond time and space, beyond all actions. Existence touches all things and all shadows. Nothing can ever touch existence. Even the very fact of its being does not touch existence. To realize existence, life must be shed. It is life that endows limitations to the unlimited self. Life of the limited self is sustained by the mind, creating impressions, by energy, supplying the impetus to accumulate and dissipate these impressions through expressions, and by gross forms and bodies functioning as the instruments through which these impressions are spent, reinforced, and eventually exhausted through actions. Life is quickly linked with actions. Life is lived through actions. Life is valued through actions. Life's survival depends on actions. Life cognizant is actions. Actions opposite in nature. Actions affirmative and negative. Actions constructive and destructive. Therefore, to let life succumb to its ultimate death is to let all actions end. When actions end completely, life of the limited self spontaneously experience itself as existence of the unlimited self. Existence being realized, evolution and involution of consciousness is complete. Illusion vanishes and the law of reincarnation no longer binds. Simply to desist.
I think that should do, because then it's a long process about actions, what action, non-action. We won't go into that. I won't be explaining this because we already explained in details when we were reading God Speaks. In short, existence is the real thing. Life is an illusion. Existence is substance and life is a shadow. So that is what I wanted to bring about, the differentiation between existence is, I always existed, I am existing and will ever exist. But so far as living is concerned, as of now I am living, tomorrow I may not be living, but I will be existing. So that's what I wanted to bring across, the difference between existence and life. All right, so now we continue with discourses, page number 304, immortality of the soul. 304.
Yeah. Immortality of the individualized soul is made possible by the fact that the individualized soul is not the same as the physical body. The individualized soul continues to exist with all its sanskaras in the inner worlds through its mental and subtle bodies, even after it has discarded its gross body at the time of death. Hence, life through the medium of the gross body is only a section of the continuous life of the individualized soul. The other sections of life, of its life, have their expression in other spheres.
So here, very important sentence, life through the medium of the gross body is only a section of the continuous life of the individualized soul. The other sections of its life have their expression in other spheres, which means in the heaven or hell. I'll read the paragraph again. Immortality of the individualized soul is made possible by the fact that the individualized soul is not, this is in italics, is not the same as the physical body. The individualized soul continues to exist with all its sanskaras in the inner worlds. Inner worlds would mean the subtle and the mental world. Inner worlds through its mental and subtle bodies, even after it has discarded its gross body at the time of death. Hence, life through the medium of the gross body is only a section of the continuous life of the individualized soul. The other sections of its life have their expression in other spheres. Again and again, we are coming to that. The death of the physical body is not the end of the journey. The death of all the three bodies, gross, subtle and mental, is the end of the journey. In that can be achieved while living in the body, by getting rid of all our desires, by offering everything to Baba, by surrendering to Baba. We can hopefully do that. And Baba's statement about my wish, the last part of my wish, where Baba says that if you take my name at the time of breathing your last, you come to me, which means you do not have to go into the rigmarole of life and death, maran janam. You experience infinite bliss eternally, which is moksha or mukti or liberation. All right, go ahead. Three worlds.
Nature is much greater than what a person can perceive through the ordinary senses of the physical body. The hidden aspects of nature consist of finer matter and forces. There is no unbridgeable gulf separating the finer aspects of nature from its gross aspect. They all interpenetrate one another and exist together. The finer aspects of nature are not perceptible to the ordinary individual, but they are nevertheless continuous with the gross aspect that is perceptible to him. They are not remote, and yet they are inaccessible to the consciousness that is functioning through the physical senses, which are not adapted for perceiving those finer aspects of nature. The ordinary person is unconscious of the inner planes, just as someone deaf is unconscious of sounds, and he cannot deal with them consciously. For all practical purposes, therefore, they are other worlds for him. The finer and hidden part of nature has two important divisions, namely the subtle and the mental, corresponding to the subtle and mental bodies of man. The whole of nature may therefore be conveniently divided into three parts: the gross world, the subtle world, and the mental world. When the individualized soul has incarnated in a physical body, it expresses its life in the gross world. When it drops the outer sheath, the physical body, it continues to have its expression of life either in the subtle world through the subtle body or in the mental world through the mental body.
All right. So here again, as we did in God Speaks, Baba talks about the three worlds. Nature is much greater than what a person can perceive through the ordinary senses of the physical body. Even technologically, if you look at it, now we have a cell phone. There are some connections, whatever you call it, vibrations, whatever you call it. Somebody wants to contact me, dials a number, I get a ring. Am I able to see those vibrations? Am I able to perceive all those invisible connectivity, what you can call it as the matrix, which is all over the universe? No, because my physical senses limits me to the physical level. Only if I graduate into the subtle world, I will be able to have access to the subtle intricacies, the subtle energies, the so-called Riddhi Siddhi, the so-called powers, the so-called everything. Only then I can access. Does it mean that it is somewhere very far? No. They are all intermingled, they are all interconnected, they are all intertwined. But I do not have the password. I do not have the key to enter into the subtle premises and know what is happening out there, or rather in here. All right. The hidden aspects of nature consist of finer matter and forces. They are hidden. There is no bridgeable gulf separating the finer aspects of nature from its gross aspect. It is not something like gross means from here to say 100 miles up there, and then there is subtle from 101st mile to 200 miles, and then there is mental, and then there is God. No, it is all intertwined in here. That's what Baba, sorry? It is all interpenetrating, it is all intertwined, it is all in here. The only thing is I cannot have access to that because I have still not got, elevated to a level where I am told that what is the PIN code or what is the password of entering into the subtle world, basically. They all interpenetrate one another and exist together. They are all coexisting, but I can't enter into that domain. The finer aspects of nature are not perceptible to the ordinary individual, but they are nevertheless continuous with the gross aspects, interpenetrating, intertwined, gross aspect that is perceptible to him. They are not remote, they are not somewhere far away, and yet they are inaccessible to the consciousness that is functioning through the physical senses, which are not adapted for perceiving those finer aspects of nature. Because my consciousness is shrouded, covered, enveloped, bound by grossness. I am gross conscious human being. So my arena, the playing field, the playing ground is only gross. Because my consciousness is gross, it is prohibiting me, it is inhibiting me, it is limiting me only to the gross circumference and not to other aspects of, other finer aspects of nature, which is the subtle and the mental. Why? Because my consciousness is gross. Why? Because my samskaras are still very gross. The ordinary person is unconscious of the inner planes. Just as someone deaf is unconscious of sound. Such a superb example. And he cannot deal with them consciously. For all practical purposes, therefore, they are other worlds for him. A deaf person is sitting next to me. I can hear sound. The sound is there. I can perceive sound. I can penetrate into that aspect of sound. He cannot because he is deaf. Does it mean that sound is somewhere far away? No, it is here. But for him, sound is the other world because he do not have the wherewithal of accessing sound. Such beautiful explanation. The finer and hidden part of nature has two important divisions, namely the subtle, we call it Shukshma, and the mental, we call it the Mana, corresponding to the subtle and mental bodies of men. Where are the subtle bodies and the mental body? Is it this is God, this is subtle, mental? No, they are all within, they are all interpenetrating. The whole of nature may therefore be conveniently divided into three parts: the gross world, the subtle world, and the mental world. When the individualized soul has incarnated in a physical body, it expresses its life in the gross world. When it drops the outer sheet would mean the physical gross body, it continues to have its expression of life either in the subtle world through the subtle body or in the mental world through the mental body. So that's enough. Huh? So now any questions? How much? We have only 3 minutes. I don't want to start a new paragraph. We'll do that next Saturday, hopefully, 4:30 next Saturday. Does anyone have any questions to ask? Anybody has anything to ask? So we are trying to understand what our Lord and Master, the highest of the high, the avatar of the age, God in human form, avatar mein Baba, has to convey. This is right from the horse's mouth. It is not something that is written 100 years, 200 years, or a few hundred years after the Master drops his body. We are so fortunate that in this time and age, the technology is so developed that we can have pure, unadulterated words and his image and his movements. This is the only age where we can actually very proudly say that we have seen God in human form, actually. So now it behooves upon us. Baba has given. This is food, you eat. You may throw it away, you may eat just a little and give it to the dogs or cows. That is up to us. He has given us the words. And why has he given us all these words? Simply to make our life more livable, more joyous. Because ultimately Baba says, in reality there is nothing but bliss. Everything is bliss. But we are not experiencing that. We are experiencing all kinds of limitations, suffering, helplessness. Why? Because of our ignorance of the true nature of the self, because of our faulty imagination and thinking. So with reading these words, hopefully trying to internalize it, trying to apply that in our life would be perhaps a little more joyous and happy.
Negative because of the karma.
Bolna. Speak loudly, I can't. What? Because of what?
Karma is what is causing it.
Soumya says, we are going through all this because of our karma. Agreed. But just as we are the creator and the manufacturer and the producer of our karma, we are also the editor of our own karma. So by listening, reading and listening to all these things, we can modify, alter, undo, change, do anything nullify our past karma through change of our thinking process based on what Baba has given us. Right from now itself, you start thinking differently. When we start thinking differently, we start feeling differently. When you start feeling differently, we understand that all life is very simple. We have ourselves made it more complicated. So my underlying thought is, we have been given this treasure. It is up to us to live it or to leave it. It's up to us. That's our choice. Okay? So I think we have perfect 6 o'clock. Thank you, Baba. Thank you for this session, and hope and pray that he helps us to apply his teachings in our life and make our life more fruitful, more impactful, more joyous, and more blissful. Thank you, Baba. Thanks to all of you. Avatar Meher.